Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. President Lee Jae-myung, who's on a state visit to China, met with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Beijing and agreed to strengthen bilateral ties by making more frequent visits between the two countries. The two sides also addressed security issues and agreed on the importance of resuming talks with North Korea. With just a day to go until the official opening of the world's biggest tech show, the CES in Las Vegas, global tech giants are gearing up for the event. Samsung unveiled its goal of putting AI into everything, while NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang announced the company's plans on autonomous vehicle AI. Ousted Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro pleaded not guilty in his first court appearance in New York. He told the judge he had been kidnapped and insisted he remains the legitimate president of Venezuela. We begin this morning with a summit between President Lee Jae-myung and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Beijing. Key focuses included strengthening bilateral ties and achieving peace on the Korean Peninsula. Our correspondent Yoon Jang-min is traveling with the president and files this report from Beijing.
The summit in Beijing began with the red carpet treatment and a 21-gun salute as President Lee Jae-myung was given an official welcome by his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. During their 90-minute-long talks on Monday, the South Korean leader vowed to consolidate the Seoul-Beijing strategic partnership and make it irreversible.
이번 정상회담은 2026년을 한중 관계 전면 복원의 원년으로 만들 중요한 계기가 될 것입니다.
The sentiment was echoed by the Chinese leader.
As friends and neighbors, there should be more frequent visits between China and South Korea, and the two countries should communicate more actively.
High on the agenda was resuming dialogue with North Korea.
한반도 평화를 위해 실현 가능한 대안을 함께 모색하겠습니다. 번영과 성장의 기본적 토대인 평화에 양국이 공동 기여할 수 있도록.
Amid complicated geopolitics, she noted the two countries fighting together in the past against Japan's colonialism in the early 20th century.
The two countries should firmly stand on the right side of history and make the choices that are strategically right.
And according to China's Xinhua News, she called for the need to work together to oppose protectionism and practice true multilateralism, apparently with Beijing's rivalry with Washington in mind. After the talks, more than a dozen MOUs were signed, including on climate, digital technology, and intellectual property rights. Also on the table were sensitive issues, such as China's unauthorized steel structures in the West Sea.
As the maritime boundary in the West Sea has not been clearly demarcated, the two sides agreed to hold vice-ministerial talks within this year to discuss defining the boundary.
On the cultural front, the leaders have agreed to gradually expand exchanges, beginning in areas including the board game Go and soccer, amid China's unofficial ban on Korean cultural content. Also suggested was China expanding its delegation of pandas. Other focuses were addressing negative sentiment and hate speech targeting each other's countries, as well as expanding cooperation on investment and supply chains. Yi was the first state guest to be hosted by Xi in the new year, and it was their second summit in around 2 months.
While their first engagement 2 months ago was more of a get-to-know session, their focus this time was taking a step further to strengthen bilateral cooperation and deepen personal bond. Yoon Jang-min, Arirang News, Beijing.
And that's the first state visit by a South Korean president to China in nearly a decade. Attention was focused not only on the outcomes of the summit, but also on the tone of the talks and the personal rapport between the two leaders. For more, here's our Blue House correspondent, Song Yu-jin.
Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. This selfie of the first couples of South Korea and China offers a glimpse into the warm and friendly atmosphere of Monday's summit between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Xi Jinping. The photo was taken with a Xiaomi smartphone that President Xi had gifted to President Yi during his state visit to South Korea last November.
통신 보안은 잘 됩니까? 정확하게有没有后门?
This time, Yi returned the gesture. He presented Xi with a painting depicting a family of qilins, a mythical creature in East Asian tradition, symbolizing good fortune, prosperity, and wise leadership. Yi also gave Xi a framed work of art featuring a gold leaf dragon motif long associated with authority and majesty. For First Lady Peng Liyuan, South Korea prepared a dorige, a traditional Korean accessory that hangs off a hanbok and a skincare device, reflecting her interest in fashion and beauty. The summit itself lasted for 90 minutes, longer than initially scheduled. National Security Advisor Wi Song-rak said the two leaders engaged in candid and in-depth discussions. That was followed by a state dinner where a band from the Chinese People's Liberation Army performed songs from both countries.
The two leaders resumed their conversation left unfinished 2 months ago in an amicable atmosphere.
The First Ladies also met separately over tea on the same day. Their conversation unfolded naturally, with both sharing artistic backgrounds. First Lady Kim Hae-kyung as a pianist and First Lady Peng as a soprano.
It's such a pleasure to meet you here in Beijing. I'm actually a longtime fan of you.
Kim later asked for Peng's interest in resuming the Korea-China Song Festival, which was last held in 2015, to which Peng called it a good suggestion.
So with the main event of his state visit, the South Korea-China summit, now concluded, President Yi will travel to Shanghai on Tuesday, after wrapping up his stay in Beijing with meetings with China's second and third highest-ranking officials, Li Qiang and Zhao Leji. Song Yujin, Arirang News, Beijing.
Now, for a closer look at the significance of that summit between President Yi and Xi, we're joined today by Professor Moo-Hui Chang, Associate Professor at the Department of East Asian Studies at Seongkyunkwan University. Professor Chang, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
So what stood out to you the most from the summit between President Yi and Xi? And could you just tell us more about how China views the overall outcome of yesterday's meeting?
Well, from Chinese perspective, I think this is a great success, especially because it marked a new beginning, a restart for the China-Korean relations. I think there are two reasons for saying so. The first reason is that you see China is happy to see the President Lee Jae-myung's expression regarding Koreans' respect for the one China policy regarding the Taiwan issue. And also at the at the same time, I think China is happy to see that the principle of, interest-based, the pragmatism, once again, becoming the cornerstone of China-Korean relations. You see, in the past years, there has been certain problems between China and Korea because the previous President Wynn administration have adopted this value-based diplomacy while prioritize the United States rather than China. So for that reason, I think China is very welcome to see the China-Korea relation going back to the ordinary and healthy track.
Right, I see. And although the two leaders seem to have set aside detailed security discussions for later, South Korea did say that they both agreed on the importance of resuming talks with North Korea. Do you think China could play a more constructive role in bringing North Korea back to dialogue in 2026?
First of all, I think I have to say that this time, the economic agendas and this economic issues seems to be the most important agenda and in the schedule during this times, China-Korean bilateral summit talks. But of course, I also have noticed that last night there seems to be a general consensus between the two countries' leaders that there seems to be a necessity, and they also acknowledged the importance of bringing back the two Koreas into the negotiation and the tables and to reopen the talks ASAP. But I would also suggest the caution, the not being overly optimistic on what kind of the role China can play in the future. Because anyway, I don't really see this specific schedules or timetables to be released at this time. Of course, I think China would be happy to deliver the message and do certain coordination roles between the two Koreas. But I think we have to wait and see with more patience to see what would happen in the future.
Right, and like you mentioned, economic issues were discussed at the summit, and hundreds of business leaders from both countries also met in Beijing, including leaders of major Korean businesses like Samsung, SK, and Hyundai. And this marked the first large-scale economic event between the two countries in 9 years. How significant is this, and how has this sort of helped strengthen the two countries' economic cooperation?
Yeah, I think this is indeed, in my eyes, the highlight or one of the biggest outcomes for this time's bilateral, summit talks. And you see, I did a simple count. There seems to be 15, cooperation documents signed by the two governments and followed with a number of MOUs signed during this China-Korean business forums. Indeed, you see, from the Chinese perspective, I think the President Xi Jinping yesterday especially emphasized the importance and the great potential for Chinese-Korean collaboration in AI, environmental, and green industries. And I hope there's the potential as well for those issues to be covered by the China-Korean Free Trade Agreement negotiation, the second phase. If that happens, I would say there will be more hard commitments and the greater potentials for the two countries to further improve their collaborations.
Right, and there was also a lot of attention on whether there would be any progress in easing Beijing's restrictions on Korean cultural content to help K-content enter the Chinese market. Would you say there was any real progress on this issue during the meeting yesterday?
I think it's very likely to happen for the Chinese government to release, the so-called cultural ban or cultural restrictions, which has been lasted for many years. You see, one of the reasons for saying so, from my perspective, is that you see right now there has been this, tension between China and Japan, especially. So I personally call that there seems to be an ongoing, this diversion effect between China and Japan as well as China and Korea. For example, nowadays there are many Chinese tourists who initially made their plan to travel to Japan. But because of the current tension, they changed their plans and they prioritize to come to Korea for travel. So this is a good sign indeed. Also regarding the Korean's content industry and the Chinese cultural bans against Korea, as you mentioned, I don't think there will be a clear policy declarations that Chinese would release all of these bans. But however, in terms of the real practice, I think the Chinese government will approve and allow the Korean enterprises, Korean entertainment industries to get into the Chinese market in a more fluent, in a more smoothified way. So I'm personally optimistic in this regards.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Chang, thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The world's biggest tech show, CES 2026, is just one day away from its official opening in Las Vegas. Some of the biggest players for this year's CES already held their media events, including Samsung, NVIDIA, and Hyundai. And this year, the spotlight is firmly on artificial intelligence, not just in software, but in the physical world around us. Our Kim Do-yeon is live in Las Vegas to tell us more. Do-yeon, where are you going to start us off for your series of CES coverage?
Well, good morning to you, Eunji. I'm here at the Wynn Las Vegas, and as you said, CES 2026 will kick off officially tomorrow, but the members of media have been here since Sunday to get a preview. Now, I chose to start my coverage at the Wynn here because Samsung, for the first time, decided to leave the Las Vegas Convention Center, where main exhibitions are clustered, to form its massive individual one. And here last night, as the company kicked off its CES events, unveiled that it will put AI into everything. First, take a look at Take a listen to the CEO of Samsung Electronics.
No company can do what we do. We partner with industry leaders, innovating together to create the best AI experiences and deliver strong user benefits.
Now you can see here the slogans have the word companion. That is to make sure that AI is present across all appliances to ensure both assistance and enjoyment for the user. Now, as for specific tech, the company unveiled its new micro RGB TV. The design was innovative as it can stand with only minimal support.
Right, it certainly looks impressive. And now beyond home electronics, we are hearing that physical AI is a major buzzword this year, isn't it?
You're spot on. This year's CES is heavily focused on physical AI, and nowhere was that more apparent than NVIDIA's keynote to kick off its CES events. As the world's largest company by market cap, NVIDIA drew thousands of people and packed an auditorium. I was lucky enough to secure a spot in the front section as its founder and CEO, Jensen Huang, announced NVIDIA's autonomous vehicle AI. Take a listen.
Today we're announcing Alpamayo, the world's first thinking, reasoning autonomous vehicle AI. Alpamayo is trained end to end, literally from camera in to actuation out.
He emphasized that this new agentic capability where AI reasons, plans, and uses tools is now being open sourced, providing a blueprint for every industry to build its own physical AI applications. This focus on physical AI also comes as Hyundai released its new robot lineup simultaneously. Hyundai is joining hands with Google's DeepMind to jointly develop next-generation humanoid robots and AI controls. I am due to travel to the Hyundai exhibit for our broadcast tomorrow, so I'll be able to bring you a closer coverage.
I see. We look forward to that report. And finally, Toyeon, before we let you go, how is South Korea performing overall at this year's show? I understand domestic companies have done quite well in the Innovation Awards.
That is correct. South Korea won the most innovation awards this year, marking the third consecutive year for the country to lead the pack. Also, keep in mind that around 60% of the 280 awards were taken by Korean firms. Around 80% of those were small to medium-sized enterprises. That's all for now. Back to you, NG.
All right, Toyeon, thank you for that report. And here in South Korea, the country's foreign reserves fell for the first time in 7 months in December last year, due to interventions aimed at managing currency volatility. According to the Bank of Korea this morning, foreign reserves stood at just over $428 billion as of December, down $2.6 billion from November. After hitting a near 5-year low in May of last year, reserves had risen for 6 consecutive months to a peak in November. As of late November, South Korea ranked 9th globally in foreign reserves. Meanwhile, deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro pleaded not guilty to U.S. charges, including narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, and weapons offenses. Maduro entered the plea in a federal court in Manhattan just 2 days after being captured by U.S. Special Forces in an operation ordered by U.S. President Donald Trump. The arraignment lasted less than 30 minutes, with the judge confirming Maduro's identity and that he understood the 4 charges against him. During the hearing, Maduro insisted he remains Venezuela's legitimate president, calling his capture illegal and describing himself as a prisoner of war. Maduro faces 4 federal counts, each carrying a potential life sentence. And as if to see the capture of Venezuelan President Maduro by the U.S. as an existential threat, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un personally ordered the hypersonic missile launch over the weekend, a move widely seen as a signaling that the North would retaliate against any threat to the regime. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
The U.S. operation in Venezuela surprised many, but one person who could be on edge the most is North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In the aftermath of the U.S. action, the regime immediately launched at least 2 hypersonic missiles on Sunday and strongly denounced Washington's capture of Maduro, calling it the most serious form of encroachment on sovereignty. North Korea and Venezuela have long built close ties on the anti-U.S. front since establishing diplomatic relations in 1974. Experts said that Kim was shocked by the incident, adding that the fact the regime tested hypersonic missiles itself shows he wanted to demonstrate himself as different from Maduro, and that nobody, not even Washington, could harm the regime.
The missile test had an indirect message in it that North Korea is a nuclear-armed country while Venezuela is not, and that the two are completely different in that sense.
By launching a hypersonic missile, the regime was showing that it has the ability to strike back immediately if the U.S. or any other hostile forces threaten the regime. Basically, it was to warn others not to even think about trying something against it.
Kim has witnessed cases of regime change in other countries, such as Iraq and Libya, which could have taught him that the only way to survive is through strength. Now, with the capture of Maduro, Kim's belief in boosting strength for survival would have solidified further, making it much harder to start denuclearization talks on the peninsula. Moreover, Kim may have become even more cautious when it comes to engaging in talks with Trump.
Kim will not rush into negotiations. North Korea has already experienced the failed Hanoi talks. So unless he clearly sees a strong U.S. commitment, such as real steps toward a peace system on the Korean peninsula through a peace treaty or the normalization of North Korea-U.S. relations, it will be hard for him to come forward.
With the 9th Party Congress slated to be held within this month, the expert added that Kim will likely further highlight the need to develop both nuclear forces and conventional military capabilities. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. The Trump administration plans to meet U.S. oil executives later this week to discuss boosting Venezuela's oil production after U.S. forces seized Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and sent him to the United States to face narco-terrorism charges. President Trump wants American firms like ExxonMobil and Chevron to invest billions to rebuild a shattered energy infrastructure. Analysts say that restoring the nation to its peak output could take a decade and cost more than $100 billion. U.S. health officials have cut the number of vaccines recommended for American children, reducing the nationwide schedule to shots against 11 illnesses. The Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention on Monday removed routine recommendations for vaccines against influenza, rotavirus, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, some forms of meningitis, and RSV, limiting them instead to high-risk children or case-by-case decisions made with doctors. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. personally directed the overhaul after reviewing how 20 peer nations approach childhood immunization, saying the United States had become an outlier in the number of vaccines it broadly recommends. Pediatricians and public health experts warn that the change could confuse parents and increase preventable diseases. In Switzerland, police on Monday say they have identified every person injured in the New Year's bar fire in Crans, Montana, putting the total at 116. Authorities say 40 people died and the youngest victim was 14 years old. 83 injured people remain hospitalized. Investigators say festive sparkling candles on champagne bottles ignited the fire when they came too close to the ceilings at the crowded La Constellation bar. Prosecutors have opened a criminal investigation into the bar's managers on suspicion of involuntary homicide and related offenses. Tokyo's Toyosu Fish Market has opened 2026 with a record-setting tuna sale. A 243-kilogram bluefin sold for 510 million yen, about $3.2 million at Monday's first auction of the year. Sushi chain operator Kiyomura Corp., led by Kiyoshi Kimura of restaurant chain Sushi Chanmai, placed the top bid, beating the previous record he set in 2019. The tuna was caught off Oma in northern Japan, a region known for prized catches, and the auction traditionally carries good luck symbolism for buyers and sellers. Pacific bluefin populations are showing signs of recovery following years of conservation efforts.
It's the coldest time of the year in South Korea. Most regions saw morning temperatures that were 5 degrees colder than yesterday. But by the afternoon, highs will go above seasonal norms, but dropping down to -9 degrees again by Thursday. So for the time being, there will be big swings in temperatures. Take good care of yourself. The air, however, remains very dry, so fire risk is a concern with a dry weather warning in place along the East Coast. Extra caution is needed to prevent wildfires. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 4 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju, Gwangju will be getting up to 7 degrees under bright skies in most parts with decent air quality. Meanwhile, rain or light snow begins tonight in Jeju and Gangwon-do province. Then another strong cold snap arrives on Thursday, followed by rain or snow from Friday into Saturday, mainly across the central regions and Jeollado provinces.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.